thank you for being with us. Thank you for the holy work that you're doing. We can't wait to hear more about it. And of course, I'll be the first one here to say, as the rabbi of this wonderful community, that if there's any way we can help, and if there's any way we can join your good fight, your hands, your holy work, then please don't hesitate to turn to us, because we're with you and for you at all times. And now, without any further ado, Roz Rothstein, ladies and gentlemen, I know I want to ask you a few questions, but I'm going to allow you to say anything you'd like to say to open this up. Roz, bechavod, please.
So thank you, first of all, for inviting me. I'm so happy to be with all of you. And as we speak together tonight, I'm sure you will learn about ways that you can be involved and help and join the different campaigns for Israel, for the Jewish people, to fight anti-Semitism. That is the work that we do at Stand With Us. And I see some of our staff have joined us. So I'm very, very proud to tell you that some of our people are right here with us, shoulder to shoulder, not only for this show, but for the support of Israel and the fight against anti-Semitism, which is the mission of Stand With Us. So nice to get to know you, Rabbi.
Yes, thank you. I know our paths have crossed, and we know quite a few people in common. I want to thank Liza, Evan Israel, also put us in touch. But if you don't mind me asking you just a few questions,
of course,
Rod, to get to know really you and Stand With Us better, and to see how, again, we can help to the best of our ability. So let me first by asking you really, what is Stand With Us, what you do exactly, and what you see as the foremost challenge that our nation faces today in 2020?
Wow. Okay. So first, what is Stand With Us? So Stand With Us is an organization with a very specific mission to support Israel and to fight anti-Semitism. Let me break down support for Israel. Support for Israel to us is about making sure that people who care about Israel are empowered to share information. So once people care about Israel, that's a very important step. But if they're not equipped to discuss Israel, to share their information, if they feel insecure, like a teenager feels insecure, they love Israel, but they feel insecure, they're just not going to speak up, not to their friends and not in a classroom. So we need the power of information and self-confidence, which is super important, which is one of the ways we support Israel. Another way we support Israel is to make sure that young people, 11, 12, and 13-year-old students, care about Israel. Because if people are not inspired, if they don't care about Israel or the Jewish people, likely they're not going to be involved. So they will not engage. Kind of think of yourself. You may know something about Vietnam, but you may not engage because you don't care enough to get involved. So our job, as we see it, is to make sure that people care, that they're inspired enough to put their hands on, as you said before, to engage. And they're not going to do that if they're not inspired. So we've taken to working not only with college students and high school students, but now we actually work with middle school students, and one day soon, God willing, with grammar school students. So the work of Stand With Us is interesting. We see ourselves as doing three things: educating and inspiring and fighting anti-Semitism. So that is our mission, and it was born out of what we saw. So we saw the need for information. It is amazing, it's mind-boggling how little people know about Israel, about the map, about the reasons that Israel went into Gaza, about, you know, why Israel does what it does. They just don't know. It's like you get mad at them, but they didn't know. They don't know it's so small. So the astounding piece is the lack of information. And as I explained to you, lack of inspiration can kill us because information is important, but it's not as important as inspiration. You know that as a rabbi. You have to inspire your congregation to do something.
Right.
You know, otherwise, what is it? It's like information, information, information. We have to be inspiring, all of us. And then, of course, we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism, which we should all be very concerned about. It's very regretful, but I would say that one of the strong reasons we began this organization in the first place was because of the rise in anti-Semitism that we saw back in 2001. So people blaming Israel, starting to blame supporters of Israel, starting to blame Jews, starting to blame anybody connected to Israel. You know, we saw a wave that a lot of other people waved away. We saw it coming. I'm a daughter of Holocaust survivors. So what's different about that is that we can sense a danger. We're kind of obsessed with it in a kind of different way than most ordinary folks. So if you descended, I grew up in the shadows of the Holocaust, having lost 80 relatives. That was a big hit for me and my brother, growing up with no relatives, barely any relatives at all. And that's the way it is for children of survivors. And so you grow up with a keen sense of what it is, what the consequences of hate, what the danger looks like. And so in the beginning of 2000, as I said, we saw hate rising 2000, 2001, when Stand With Us began 19 years ago, hard to believe. We saw the beginnings of this on college campuses and in the way the news was covering Israel. There was something going on, and it was very uncomfortable. Some people couldn't see it. They couldn't see it. They didn't get ready for it. I am very blessed that we opened Stand With Us 19 years ago. I think we're all blessed. We're working on 5 continents now. It's a big organization. I cannot even imagine having to begin this organization now. So I'm very grateful that we saw what we saw in 2000 and 2001 and opened in May of 2001.
Right. That is indeed amazing that you've grown so quickly and so effectively. But so going back to that question, what would you say is the foremost challenge of the Jewish nation? Anti-Semitism, as you pointed out today, the lack of education. If you had to pinpoint one challenge, what would it be?
Well, there are people who want to take every movement, like Black Lives Matter, for example, and hijack it and make it an anti-Semitic movement. There are people who took the Women's March and hijacked it and turned it against Jewish people and turned it against supporters of Israel. There are people who are very bold and very courageous now, in a bad way, to come after Jewish people or people who care about the state of Israel. And we are committed to pointing a finger at it and making sure that it's exposed. Sunlight for these bad things is very important. We have had many successes in 19 years based on this philosophy that when you see hate, you point it out, you hold people responsible. If it's an administration at a college campus, you hold them responsible. You demand that they make a statement. And so in the way that we've opened up, it's probably interesting to you to note that we now have a legal department, which gives us very special wings, because it's all fine and good to educate and inspire and do all the good stuff. But then if people are coming at us, or if groups are targeting Israel and its supporters, we need mechanisms. We need ways to be able to be up and ready to shield ourselves and to push back in a very proactive and productive way. So we now have this legal department, which is very successful in combating these kinds of bullying of Jews and supporters of Israel. And we also have the new Center for Combating Anti-Semitism doing the same thing, focused only on anti-Semitism, also from legal and educational ways.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
No, that does answer my question. It does. Yeah, no, thank you. I want to ask you just a philosophical question. Maybe you can answer briefly, because I want to really be more focused on practical things we can do. But the age-old question of why anti-Semitism? Why do you think people hate Jews so much?
My answer would not be any better than any of yours on this call. Unfortunately, we can all surmise about why the Jews. Many books have been written. Right. I, in my position, am more concerned that it is happening, and that I can see their plan and I could see their strategy. It's very cunning, the way things are done. For example, very strategic on the college campus. So I'm more concerned with that it is happening and that many people fall into traps. I mean, I'll go back to the Women's March. Imagine being taken over by Linda Sarsour, Tamika Malloy, and making Jews who love the state of Israel, or even non-Jews who love the state of Israel, uncomfortable about going to the Women's March. What we see is a strategy to make that be the case. They call it normalization. Right. Shake your heads if you have heard of the term normalization. Normalization. So the goal would be, don't normalize. Don't allow Jewish people who are Zionists to be part of the Women's March. Don't normalize them. They're bad. They're evil. And so when you push the Jews or the supporters of Israel, non-Jews, aside and marginalize and keep marginalizing them, what happens? It's reminiscent of every bad thing that we've ever heard about that happened to the Jewish people or happened to any other group of people when they're shoved to the side and made to be the stranger.
Right. Yeah.
And we cannot, and we will not tolerate it.
Right. Okay, good. So back to the deed, and practically speaking. So many of us are thinking, okay, this is great. We thank God and we thank Roz Rothstein and her amazing staff for StandWithUs. We thank God and all the great leaders for the good Jewish organizations out there. But when we stand at home all alone, especially during this COVID-19, and we say to ourselves, gosh, this has happened. And Deshaun Jackson just a few days ago tweeted something terrible. And there's so much hatred around us. What can I, the small human being in the confines of my home, do? What is your answer to that? I mean, you're fighting the great fight. You have an organization that is creating wonders, truly. But what can the individual do? Someone that doesn't seem to have a great scope of influence.
So much. Each person is so powerful, and you know that each person is a universe.
Right.
Each one of us has power that you even have no clue. Especially now with social media, you have no idea how powerful one person can be.
Right.
So I would suggest you read an article that you don't like. You draft a short, polite letter to respond to it. You see a campaign through StandWithUs that's asking for you to either sign the petition, let your friends be aware, make sure you're signed up for StandWithUs newsletters. There are other organizations, but tonight we're talking about StandWithUs. You're asking me my advice about what you can do, and I'm biased. I think we really do direct people in a good way. So go to standwithus.com, and at the top on the right, you can ask to receive a weekly newsletter, which will let you know what's going on and what you can do. Sometimes it's just, this is great news and that is great news, and we have achieved this. We just had a new state today, Missouri. Missouri just signed legislation, anti-BDS legislation. Everybody go like this, yay. So we are very grateful. Now we have 30 or more, maybe 31. Jennifer, how many? 31? Don't know. I think it's 31 states that have anti-BDS legislation, anti-boycott legislation for the state of Israel. So if a company is $100,000 or over, you know, they're not allowed to boycott the state of Israel. So what's important about that? It's people like you that got involved to put this kind of pressure to make their elected officials understand that this is something that their constituents want, that we need them to stand up for us and draft this bill that is anti-BDS legislation. And we're doing great. We passed the halfway mark of half of the states, and now we're at 30 or 31, forgive me, I can't remember, but we're very involved in that. And so this is the answer to the question, what can you do? You can put your hands on, you can get involved, you can sign a petition, you can write a letter, you can get involved in a campaign, you can educate your friends. You can ask me at no cost to send you a booklet called Pocket Facts, or 10 things that everybody should know about Israel. And just write me a note and say, we had this meeting and I need 20 copies of 10 things everybody should know about Israel. Please send them right away. 10 things everybody should know about Jerusalem. You know, these things help you educate yourself. Oh, good. I just saw Pocket Facts.
Maybe you can show it. Randy Jablonier is showing it to everyone. That's
yay, yay, Randy.
Right.
So, and yes, best practices. So you're on board. You have information. It's a good first step. So now the question for you is, what are you going to do with that information? Are you going to read it so that you feel more comfortable with your own level of knowledge? And a lot of this stuff is so basic and easy, you'll love it. It's just straight to the brain. 10 things. Or what is your right on a college campus? You want to tell your children, your grandchildren, what are their rights on a college campus? If somebody comes and they won't let their speakers speak, do the kids have any rights? Well, yes, they do. And we have attorneys that will stand by their sides and explain it to them. So, and plus you have the best practices book. We have Know Your Rights book. We have so many little booklets that are easy for you to digest and to share with your friends. So I am inviting you to put your hands on.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. And that's a great answer to the question too. Thank you, Roz. I know we have a lot of questions here on the chat, and I do want to get to them. So maybe one or two final questions from me. So you've been around for 19 years now, and as mentioned, you've been tremendously successful. And we wish you that God should continue to bless you with immense success, because the Jewish world needs you. Our world needs you. But, you know, the fact that we need you also points to this other fact, and that is that anti-Semitism still exists and maybe is growing. I want to ask you a question that maybe focuses us not just on the negativity out there, but maybe on the positivity out there. Have you seen anything during the past 19 years in which you've told yourself, oh, this gives me hope. This is a point of light in this darkness that we are trying to fight? Is there any encouraging word, any encouraging vision that you can share with us tonight?
Yes. So I will direct you to the numbers of children, of young people, of young adults that come to us for help. Now, in the beginning of Stand With Us, 19 years ago, we would get scattered requests for help, and students were crying, literally crying in our offices and telling us that nobody's helping them. Today, we have very positive programs, empowering programs, proactive programs that help students in big numbers feel like they can walk into a room and discuss a topic and not worry that they're going to be looking stupid or looking like they don't know something. They're able to answer, they're able to respond. And the numbers for us are growing bigger and bigger every single year. So even if you take a look at our social media, we have a following of 1,200,000 or 300,000, I've lost track already, just on Facebook in English. And what may give you hope, what gives me a lot of hope every day, is we're getting bigger and bigger numbers in Arabic. Bigger numbers following us in Arabic. We just produced a film called Minority of One. We should show it at your shul. And the person that the film is about escaped from Egypt. He became a Zionist, and they almost killed him for it. And he had to do his own investigation, his own journey. And because he did that, his life was at stake. He nearly killed himself because he was being tortured in prison. And now he works for us. He works for us full time, and he wrote this book, Minority of One. Hannah has it up, and you know, he's a superstar. He gives me hope. My team, my staff are so talented. They give me hope. They have the passion and the drive to make it better, to take a student from point A to point Z and help them tell Israel's story, to feel it in their hearts, and to share it with their friends.
Right. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I mean, you remind me, and maybe I'll conclude just my part with this, because we have so many questions here to address. I hope to get to all of them. But, you know, Racheli Frankel is the mother of Naftali Frankel of blessed memory, who was kidnapped and murdered by evil terrorists in the summer of 2014. I'm sure you remember that, Roz, and all of us here on the call remember this, along with two additional friends, Gilad Shar and Eyal Ifrach. But Racheli Frankel, the mother of Naftali, was by us a few times. We've developed a very special connection with her, and she answered what you know, the words that you are saying, but in a beautiful poetic way. And she says that yes, with all of this darkness, she realized that when you create light, when you are a person of light, then it draws other lights, and eventually when one light ties itself to another light, that darkness is expelled. So you're certainly, Stand With Us is a beacon of light to the entire world. And I do encourage everyone listening to us now to really do your part to join this wonderful organization and ensure that this light continues to touch our lights. And with the joining of all these lights together, we will no doubt expel this darkness, if not now, then please God, very, very soon. With your permission, Roz, I'm gonna turn to the chat questions first and see if we can get through them quickly. So question number one here, you know, I'm sure you can see them too. What do we do about Jews who don't support Israel? What's your answer on that?
Well, okay, twofold. I would say it's really important for us to focus on the Jews who do support Israel first. Remember that Israel would not have an army if we only focused on scattered people. You have to bring everybody together. You have to develop your team, your army, the people that are going to speak up on behalf of Israel. I grew up in an organization that believed in youth, leading youth. And so in B'nai Akiva, I don't know if any of you are familiar with B'nai Akiva. B'nai Akiva is where I got my big dose of Zionism, but I also got trained as a person who recognizes that youth must lead youth. So we need to influence the first core, the core of people who do care. And then those kids, those young adults will influence their friends with information and inspiration and bring them to an event. That's how you grow. That's how we've been successful. Focus on those who do care first. Okay, and then what do you do with people who don't care, who don't care at all? Well, this is what we try to avoid, or who don't love Israel. You go gently. There's no point in arguing with someone. You go gently. You try to bring them to you, bring them in, as long as they're not being destructive or threatening you. Try to bring them to you. Tell them one thing. Don't tell them 10 things. And see if they listen, if they're interested. Your challenge is how you pique their interest. Your challenge to someone who doesn't care is how you get them to say, you know what, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more about the 3,000-year-old connection to Jerusalem. I did not know that.
Right, right. That's an excellent point. Excellent point. I love that. Okay, next question. What do we do about this latest horrific issue with Yemen Jews? I'm not sure what this is referring to. Maybe you can shed light. Otherwise, we'll move to the next question.
I'm not sure. I just imagine that the Yemenite Jews might be under pressure because of what's going on there. But I'm sure that they're in touch with Israel, and hopefully there'll be a rescue if they need to be rescued.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I think this is an important question because many of us have children in colleges or about to go to college. So what is your perspective on sending our children to college campus that are becoming hostile to Jews? Objective, go and represent us, go and fight to reclaim academic platforms, but subjectively isolate and stress out very young people on hostile campuses. So what's your take, basically? What's your take on sending our children to college campuses that might be very hostile to Jews?
So I would ask the question, how prepared, how strong is the child? If it's a strong person who's unshakable and really feels confident about the state of Israel and loves it and wants to go there and visit, etc., I wouldn't hesitate about where they go. We need them on campuses where there's hostility, not for them to be heroes. I don't need any heroes. But what I do need is for them to join other students, Jewish and non-Jewish students who care about the state of Israel, to be able to push back on anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism there on that campus. But if they're a fragile student and they don't really know and they don't really have a connection to Israel, you might think twice about the kind of campus that they're going to go to. Will they be easily influenced? You know your kids, you know your grandchildren. You know, you have an opportunity to choose well. I could have sent any of my kids to UC Irvine. I wouldn't have cared because they're strong on Israel and they're strong. They wouldn't have been pushed around that way. But some students are. So we have to be careful and know your kid.
Right. Okay.
Prepare your kid. Prepare your kid if you can.
Which is connected to this question. So I'm going to jump. I'm not following the order right here, just because it's connected to this subject. So what is available for Jewish teenagers to arm them with defense to support Israel before they go to college?
So once again, I'm very biased. I will refer you to Stand With Us.
Right.
We have a high school program. We have multiple high school programs, and it's very important for teens to be prepared, to be inspired, and to know what they're about to see, potentially. They won't all see problems on campuses. There are thousands of campuses in America and in Canada, but they may see it, and they should be aware of what may come. They should be aware of their rights. They should be aware of the campaigns that are run on a campus against Israel. So they need to be prepared, and we're in a position to be able to do that with young people. So our leaders are all young, out of college, great, fun, dynamic, people, and they do an excellent job preparing students for college campus.
Okay, very good. And I would support that too. I think you have great things really for teenagers. I've seen what you do. Okay, next, I'm going backwards a little bit. Question here. Since Stand With Us is growing so fast, it also means that there's a lot of demand for their service, which is not a good thing. So where do you think we're going with this? I think you related to it, but
when we first began, there was so much demand, we were dizzy. We didn't really know what to begin with. We focused on the media first for a couple of years, and then we shifted to the college campus. We went to the things that were the squeakiest wheels. But by now, we see the trends and we understand the strategy of the other side. And we have developed our own strategies. For example, the college campus, the way that we work with students, our legal department. So we have ways now of pushing back, of pushing out huge amounts of information. Literally the little booklets that people held up earlier, we have distributed millions of those booklets in a variety of languages. The comfort that you should take here is that there are people out there that love the state of Israel, that are very supportive and love the Jewish people, or they are the Jewish people, and they're positive. And, you know, you have to know that we have a lot of friends. That should give you hope also, that there are a lot of people out there that want to help, that want to work with Israel, that want to teach, that want to write that article. I said, you know, write a letter to the editor. There are a lot of people out there that are taking a pen and doing it. However, let me caution you all, do not assume that somebody else will do it. You have to assume that somebody else won't do it, and you have to do it yourself.
Right. Fantastic. Very good. Okay, next question. This is a little bit political, so maybe I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. But what is the position of Stand With Us when it comes to politicians who may make supremacist remarks or other type of remarks? Do you have any position towards politicians and holding them accountable?
So we don't take a Democrat or Republican kind of stand. We're not political at all. If you think about how maybe AIPAC functions or JNF or any of the organizations, we would be nowhere if we just focused on one party. You can't do that. Israel is the convener that brings us all together. And now with anti-Semitism, we will hold people accountable, whether they're on the left or the right. We will hold them accountable if they go after Jewish people or supporters of Israel. As I said, we're not going to tolerate it. We talk about the far left, the far right, and radical Islam. That is what we do. So, and we have a lot of literature about that. So.
Right. Okay, very good. Next question here. So we are very concerned with the concerted efforts of the Muslim Brotherhood to radicalize Black Lives Matter and the left to undermine the USA commitment to Israel. Again, I'm not going to go into politics, but the question is, where are the voices condemning the anti-Semitic pressure on the left?
So we're here. We will condemn anti-Semitic voices on the far left. And as I said earlier, there is an effort within each movement to hijack it, to take it over and turn it against Israel. We know what's happening. We can see what's happening, and Muslim Brotherhood included. It's going to be our job to sift through it all and clarify it. It's going to be our job to find our friends in the Black community, and there are many friends in the Black community, and work with them and build bridges. And it is our responsibility as Jews, because this is a value of ours. We will not stand by and witness our brothers' blood shed. So we have a responsibility to speak up against anti-Semitism, and we have a responsibility to help our brothers and sisters, no matter what color they are. If they're being tortured or harmed, we can't stand by and be silent. So our job is focused on Israel, the Jewish people. We have a mission that is about that. But through it all, we will hold people accountable.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Roz. Two more questions I see. We'll see if there's more. I hope you don't mind. But here's a great question. What can an incoming law student, such as myself, and also someone's asking here, and also current lawyers, do to fight anti-Semitism and hate? I suppose also this is a question that is more geared towards lawyers and the legal fight that you have.
Yes, well, I will just very quickly say to all of you that we do have a program for pro bono attorneys. We have 170 pro bono attorneys now affiliated with Stand With Us. We're very excited about the growing number. That gives me hope too, that we have all these wonderful people who are aligned with us and waiting to help a student or to help a professor or to help a community person who's being bullied and their rights are not being respected. If you want to write to the head of the law, our legal department, jot this down: Jonathan B. at standwithus.com.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Last question here. If I take action and I'm personally attacked with negative reviews on Yelp or other social media attacks, can Stand With Us help me fight back?
So the answer is, if your rights or if something happened that crossed the line, you should contact us. I would need to know more detail. Tonight we don't have time for that detail, but you can contact us and find out if your rights have been violated. Again, Jonathan B. is a good starting point, and then we will help you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Maybe last question, if you have the time, Roz.
But can I just add something?
Yeah, sure, please.
Just a cautionary note for all of you.
Yeah.
I've recommended that you draft a letter to the editor when you get upset about an article. I want to emphasize that you should be kind, and you should be informative, and that you should keep your feet on the ground and be stable. And imagine that I'm sitting on your shoulder and going, no, that's not appropriate language. Just be your own, overseer, and be smart about what you're putting on the internet that can never be taken down. Be smart about how you write a letter, because you'll suffer for it if it was such an angry. Before you push that button, think twice. Pretend you have somebody sitting on your shoulder and watching your words. Be very careful. I know you're angry sometimes. So am I. But, take your time and write logically and watch your words, because it'll go a lot further. I promise you that, if you can be thoughtful.
Right. Okay. That's an excellent point. Thank you. Thank you. One question here, which I received privately, and that is, how did you come up with the name Stand With Us? And with the growing division among people in our nation, how can the us remain us?
Great question. The original name of Stand With Us is based on the story of how we began the organization. It was the Israel Emergency Alliance. We still have that name, Israel Emergency Alliance. We had an original meeting here in our house of 50 people, just like you, rabbis from every denomination. Somebody from the ADL was here, the Federation, Simon Wiesenthal. I mean, the house was packed with movers and shakers. And we realized that evening that there wasn't an organization that was going to address the issues of the fight for hearts and minds about Israel. And so we thought initially, okay, let's put everybody together and organize this thing and do that mission and call it the Israel Emergency Alliance. But then we realized it was too narrow. So we kept that name, but we moved it to Stand With Us. And by now everybody knows Stand With Us. It's kind of a household name around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can the us remain us with the growing division?
Well, I'm going to go back to an earlier answer I gave you about how we see hope.
Right.
I'm sitting in a position from a bird's eye view, watching students come to us and ask to be part of this. Just that question earlier about a law school student, that gives me hope. That person wants to be involved. They have their heart already invested, and they want to know how they can help. That should give us all hope, and that is what I see, and the numbers are growing. So the us is at the core. It's there. We just need to harness it and grow it and inspire more and more people to be part of the us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Roz, really. Thank you for your inspiring words, for your call to action, and for the holy work that you do on behalf of all of us. I do encourage everyone who was on the call and beyond to partner with Stand With Us and ensure that indeed the voice of truth, the voice of goodness, and the voice of our nation and its history continues to prevail over all of the evil and anti-Semitic voices out there. And please God, goodness and light will indeed prevail.